Everyone, welcome. I'm Dingjo Curry, Director of Leadership Institute for Tomorrow, LIFT. On behalf of LIFT and the California Community College Chancellor's Office, welcome to our Classified Professional and Career Advancement webinar series. Now, today's webinar is presented with live captions, so it is available should you want to use it. So I think this on a Friday, I want you to raise your right hand and pat yourself on the back here for taking the initiative to register and then most importantly, attend today's webinars. I know for some, and maybe many of you, I know that with your 410 summer schedule started, that this is actually your day off and also a long weekend ahead. So thank you for joining us. The Leadership Institute for Tomorrow that I direct here at Cal State Fullerton was established to actually serve the needs of emerging leaders of community colleges. We are proud, very proud to serve our diverse professionals in your pursuit and development as thriving, strong leaders. We're very honored to collaborate with the California Community College Chancellor's Office in producing this webinar series to enhance the leadership capacity and competency of our classified professionals. If you are faculty, administrator, or trustee, this particular webinar series should also be beneficial to you to learn as well as to support the success of our classified professionals. I want to just quickly review our California's Vision for Success goals. Okay, some of you may be familiar, and those of you who attended know that I always repeat them as a reminder. Increase the percentage of students annually who complete associate degrees, credentials, certificates, and other specific skill sets to increase the number of students transferring by 35% annually and reduce the average number of units accumulated for students earning associate degrees. Increase educational programs, completers, and reporting that they are actually employed. Reduce equity gaps and faster improvements across all those measures among our underrepresented students, and reduce the achievement gaps across all those measures through faster improvements among colleges located in regions with the lowest educational attainment of adults. Those goals are California Community College goals, but that really is not just for California. And I repeat those goals every time as a reminder, the what and why of what we do, what you do every day. The Chancellor's Office is committed to the how we achieve those goals by providing support such as these type of programs we offer to enhance your capacity to serve and to lead. This series of webinar topics are developed from classified professionals' own responses to the DEIA Professional Development Needs Survey that was done last year. We want to acknowledge the strong support and the guidance of the California Community College Classified Senate, 4CS, and the California School Employees Association, CSEA. I want to thank you for being a good partner with the Chancellor's Office and with us at LIFT. In the last year in particular, I would say many senior leaders are troubled by the lack of talent pool. When I talk to them, my response when they do say that it's hard to find whatever position they're looking for, my response to them is always, have you looked internally to your classified professionals? That's where one should look first for talent to find and develop strong leaders for your campus now and for the future. So you're not only developing leaders for your campus, but you're actually developing leaders when we promote classified professionals across the state and the country. So since you joined us today, I know you are excited to learn how you can develop yourselves further professionally and lead as a classified professional. And if you are a senior leader, I seriously encourage you to really focus on your classified professionals and treat that as your most precious talent pool. So our goal in the short hour today is to help provide examples of how you can lead in your current role, some insights on how you may advance in your career, and giving you some concrete strategies in your career and leadership development. We have an excellent lineup on the panel today, so let me introduce them to you. From State Center Community College District, Director of EEO, Diversity and Professional Development, Christine Phillips. Thank you for joining us today, Christine. And from Norco College, President of the college, Dr. Monica Green. Thank you, President Green. And a multi-talented leader who is an author of U-Turn, founder of Career Clarity Lab, and a career coach, Ashley Stahl. Thank you for joining us. And Ashley will do a live coaching demo later today. So that's something new we're trying today. All right, let's get started. Let me start with the first question for our panel. You know, leadership is a mindset. We've talked about that before, that empowers individuals to embody the qualities of a leader, irrespective of their official designation as faculty, administrator, or classified professional. And, you know, even if you are positioned at the lowest level in that organizational chart with many boxes above you, how can you effectively demonstrate leadership from where you are? And when I say you, I'm talking to the classified professionals. So panel, could you help me answer that question for our classified professionals?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that first question. I think that there's a fallacy in this concept of leadership, that you have to have this title or you have to have done something revolutionary to be a leader or to make a difference in someone's life. And I think too often we overlook what Drew Dudley called lollipop moments in one of my favorite TED Talks. So maybe someone complimented you and you were having a really rough day and they said, you know, you've got some really cute shoes on. Or maybe someone you don't even talk to anymore took you to a restaurant that is now your favorite restaurant and you have, you know, important celebrations there. There's a lot of little things that we just don't celebrate. And Drew actually said that we celebrate birthdays even if the only thing we accomplished was staying alive for the whole year, right? So why wouldn't we celebrate other things that should be small wins? And I think that also speaks to attitude, because being open, being willing to learn, having a growth mindset, having flexibility, all of those things are critical. Neurologically, our brains are not hardwired to be happy. We're hardwired to survive. And so we actually have to work harder at the happiness part than the looking for the negative part, because it's a biological response. And that also leads to us needing to improvise. It's important to have a good mentor or support system, because in the workplace, a lot of answers are not found in a textbook, which is how we're taught in school to find answers. So having a mentor, having that supportive space is great to learn, but also to seek feedback. And so all of those skills will benefit you no matter what role you're in, no matter what stage you're in your career.
I love what you're sharing. And do you know what's so interesting, Christine, is that I just had Drew Dudley on my podcast last year. So that's so fun that you're mentioning him. So full of leadership wisdom. I feel like there's so many different areas and nuances of leadership. So I want to start with self-leadership. You know, the message of my work is really don't do what you love, do what you are. Because sometimes the things that we love aren't necessarily things that we have a unique brilliance at, or sometimes the artist isn't meant to make a job out of their art. So I think the first thing is to really ask yourself, whatever job you're in or whatever job you're pursuing, let's say that you don't love what you're doing. There's a whole body of work, and it's created by a man, you know, or it's explored by Dan Cable. And speaking of the show, I actually interviewed him early on, and he talks about job crafting, which is essentially turning a bland job into a grand job. So how can we take a look at the work that we're doing and take initiative and be self-led by saying, okay, this isn't exactly what I want to be doing, but I'm going to make art of it. And what that means is I'm going to look at the core skill set, your unique brilliance that you want to carry with you throughout your career, and ask yourself, how can I take initiative and offer a project that I think is seriously needed, that could hone my skills in a way that I would want to be honing them? That allows you to work on, I think, another facet of self-leadership, which is storytelling. So, I think a lot of people put pressure on themselves to get their career right in the first try and build off of that. But I don't think that's real. I think as humans, we're growing, moving, changing organisms. And so what leadership is going to look like within ourselves is to really honor that. And what that means is really paying attention to how can you share the story of your past in a way that makes sense for your future? How can you take the thread of your past experiences and share about them in a way that makes sense of where you're going? So let's say you don't love the job that you're in or where you land. I think an area of self-leadership is to job craft, to say to yourself, I'm going to take initiative and offer a project that's of high value, and I'm going to figure out how to talk about my experiences for the next thing that I want in a way that really makes sense for the person that's listening. And I also think professionally, just one final note, and I know that Monica probably has a lot of wisdom here too. I think that professionally, one of the most powerful things you can do as a leader is actually in silence. I think that sometimes when we're in a new environment, especially the first 90 days of a new job, for example, we want to prove ourselves. We want to add value. We want to share. But I think one of the most powerful things that leaders can do is in the silence, is in listening, observing, collecting information on an environment before you interject or put yourself fully in that environment. So I would say if you're in any sort of transition, you're in anything new, to really pay attention to the importance of just observing the environment before you fully weigh in.
Beautiful advice, Ashley. Thank you. As exerting your leadership from the box on the chart and where you're at, I think, important is owning your expertise. Every box within our organizational chart has areas of expertise in being the best that you can be within your area. And important is using your voice, making sure that you have a voice at the table that matters, because your expertise matters at the institution. Character matters, honesty, integrity, and loyalty. And I think one of the most important things is not to limit yourself to a box on an organization chart. I'll give you an example. I've been at my college now for about 14 years. And even prior to being at the college, have a classified professional. She's still there. She's a program coordinator, and she is an amazing leader. She's been a council co-chair with me. Has gotten involved in our governance. She's led advisory councils. She's key leadership in many student affinity groups and as a part-time instructor. So you can lead from whatever box you're in. Don't limit yourself to the box. Remember that character matters. Using your voice matters, and owning the expertise that you have within the organization.
Thank you, Monica. Actually, you just helped me going to where I wanted to take next, because I'm thinking about, those who feel they're boxed in, on that chart. And it's easy to believe all those wonderful things that all three of you just talked about, but you gave an example. So it's easier to believe when you have real examples to point to. So I would love to have Christine and Monica, you again, let's hear some real examples where you witness an experience, like you mentioned, a classified professional who exercised that leadership agency on a campus, inside of their box, or how did they get out of the box in a department that made a difference from their own individual effort as a leader.
Thank you. The person that comes to mind for me, she is one of the most soft-spoken, shy individuals, but she loves to assist in the background. She's an expert in her area. In fact, I've told her, you can't retire before I do because I need you here. And she was instrumental at getting our 8-day cumbersome matriculation process for new students to under 2 days, and sometimes even within a day. And that required collaboration, communication with others, and using skills beyond immediate area. And as an example, she has been involved in service to her fellow classified professionals, using her organizational skills towards fostering a community for our classified professionals, from leading the process for selecting our classified professional of the year, to lending her organizational skills to enhance community building among our classified professionals. It's so important to me that our employees want to come to work, that they enjoy their work. And it's more than just everyone having a purpose at the college. It is about understanding their purpose as it relates to the strategic goals of the college, and recognizing their value within the institution, the students that they serve, and showing up with enthusiasm to serve. So this individual who I love dearly, she's an expert in her area. She's a master collaborator. Communication with others is stellar, and she uses her skills beyond her immediate area to support the entire institution, the students, her classified professionals, and she comes to work with enthusiasm. Really is beautiful.
Yeah, along some of similar experiences as Dr. Green, some of the things that stand out to me, I've been in public service for 25 years, and I think we can all think of people who stand out for both good and bad reasons, right? And I think it's important to look at both and take note. So if you're in a role that affords you some power and some autonomy, it's really important to be able to mentor your staff and cultivate their skills. I had a manager many years ago who kept volunteering me for special projects and putting me on special committees, and I'm like, I'm tired. Like, why do you keep putting me on these things? And she told me, you're getting your name out there. I'm making sure you get your name out there because you're going to do some great things. And then conversely, I had an employee come to our district who had gotten an advanced degree, decided that what their advanced degree was in was something they were not interested in doing anymore. So it was almost like starting over. And they came to me and said, what do you think about this role? What do you think about that role? Which one do you think would be good for me? Are there, things that would fit my interest? Are there committees I should be involved in? Are there groups I should get involved with? And both of these scenarios are really about trying new things. They're about building up your skill set, and they're really about growing your network. And all of those things are critical in career development. So I encourage people to take on temporary assignments, volunteer for projects, join committees, because it really positions you to build your skills and to build your network also. And it helps you not only in leading from your current role, but in launching you potentially into other roles, depending on whatever your goal is.
So it is getting outside of that box and do something that's outside of the box, like joining a committee. That's great. Thank you. We have consistently encouraged and motivated classified professionals' aspirational goals, right, for career advancement. However, it's common that when we finally have that desire to move up, yet not having the insights on how to achieve that goal. So can you please provide some concrete and practical advice on how to climb that leadership ladder? What specific skills are essential for excelling in leadership as a classified professional?
This is such a fun question. I have to jump in for it. I would say the first thing I think about as a leader is people don't work for me, I work for them. So I think that's true leadership, is like my goal is to help people shine. And because of that, I happen to shine anyway. So it's a win-win-win-win-win. There's a couple unique things that I think make you skip the ladder. And I'm really interested in people stepping into who they truly are. And that's what my work is about, is helping them shine. So I think the ultimate hack is really figuring out who you are and where your gifts are. And I know I've said that a little bit before, And just to kind of speak to that a little bit more, the first thing is, you know, we see in the workplace, there's a really large percent of people who are not engaged in their job. And we see a really large percent of burnout. And I think that one of the reasons we get burnt out is because we're walking on a path for too long that is not actually ours. I worked in counterterrorism and national security before I stepped into entrepreneurship. And what I learned was that there was two core facets to my career that I really needed to consider in order to be fulfilled and also to shine as a leader in the way that I was supposed to. The first thing was the what, meaning what is your core skill set? Not what are you interested in, that's valuable, but what is your core skill set? Because here's the thing. If you are trying to be someone else, if you're trying to step into a skill set the majority of the day in your tasks, it feels like you're pushing a river and you're not going to be able to perform if you're being someone else. So I think, you know, being a happy consumer of something, for me, I love consuming politics and fashion and even cupcakes. You know, it doesn't make you a necessarily fulfilled or skilled producer of that thing. So my love for politics did not mean that I was meant to be a politician. My love for cupcakes does not mean I'm meant to be a baker, et cetera, et cetera. So I think first asking yourself, what is your gift? And if you really make that a priority, you're able to kind of swim over. I think there's a few lily pads in our career. You can swim over to the second lily pad. I think on the first one is a lot of people saying, well, what am I gifted at? But if you're willing to do the work and really self-discover and be experimental, you move over to the second lily pad, which is you're in a world where you're using your gift. And when you're using your gift, people notice you because you're talented. People notice, just like we had Monica talking about someone in her office that is so valuable for her, they shine. She's using a core skill set that is really noticeable, and it's easy to be yourself. It's easy to shine when you're being you. So I would say the world becomes a space of opportunities for you. And it's almost like a river current where opportunities are coming at you and your life becomes a game in your career of saying yes or no to those opportunities. And sometimes opportunities, even though they're abundant, can be a very high form of distraction because you can step into quote unquote the wrong opportunity. So I think the work is really, how can you first click into your gift? A couple other hacks for leadership. Number one is business development. No matter what your role is in an organization, there's two things that keep a great company running. Number one is an offering, whether it's a service or a product. And number two is leads, people who want their offer. So no matter what your function is in a company, I would say, or in an organization, how can you help them expand? I remember when I was at the Pentagon and working in national security, I had nothing to do with them. You know, I was working at a defense contractor, which means I wasn't directly in the government. I was hired as a private company by the government to do a government job. And I was always asking myself at networking events, how can I help the CEO of my firm win another government contract? It wasn't my job, but it was a mindset of leadership to be able to help the bottom line. I think leaders check their ego at the door and they're able to see the bigger picture and roll their sleeves up and be helpful in the ways that they know how to be. And I know we talked about job crafting as leadership. There's so many other things I would say. The final thing I would recommend that could be a whole webinar in and of itself, I could talk about forever, is personal branding. I think that is a way for you to jump the ladder. I think there's a dignity to process. So I think looking at your career, knowing there's no shortcuts, and you go doing the step-by-step is incredibly powerful. But I think when you have a personal brand and you can establish influence online and really use your voice to help people's lives in an area that you've developed some sort of expertise, and no matter who you are, you do have a gift, whether you know what that is or not. Being able to share content on that. And that doesn't mean you're becoming an influencer. You don't need to go get a bunch of followers on TikTok or whatever have you, but just establish your voice online as someone that adds value. Employers notice that. It helps you if you ever want to start a side hustle. I think that's a true act of leadership. And research shows that companies benefit from employees who have some sort of platform, big or small. So you can start sharing blogs on LinkedIn. You can start posting on Facebook, making a public profile. There are so many ways to create a personal brand. I think the internet is full of islands. You know, I have my Forbes column, I have my book, I have my podcast. There's so many different places you can go to establish influence. So I just want to encourage that as a way to, jump a little faster up that ladder. And that's something you can do on the side without pressure. So I don't want to monopolize this. I could go on forever, but I will, leave it to you, Monica. I'm sure you have some thoughts.
Personal branding. I love that. I'm going to steal it. climbing that ladder, I think takes vision. Those that are most successful are those that lead from the role that they're in and look to the next level or more beyond, lily pads above and beyond, to determine what skills and experience, education, and training they need to advance. We are learning organizations. So one of the key factors for us is being able to embrace and welcome change, because when we learn, we change, and change is at the very nature of what we do within the California Community College system. I'll give you another example. This individual started out as a student and worked as got her degrees, came back to work for us as a matriculation specialist, and realized that she wanted to do counseling. She went back to school, she advanced into an educational advisor, and then finished her degree and started as a counselor. She's been counseling for a number of years now. And I tell you, she's tenacious, and that's critical. Advancing may not happen the first attempt, but maintaining that vision and a positive attitude and remembering experience is not just what happens to you, but what you do with that happens to you is the most impactful. What you do with that is the most impactful. And so, for instance, she didn't get the first job out of the gate. So interviewing, you may not get the first job that you had in mind, but it's learning from that experience, what happened in the interview process that's the most impactful. So areas that are important is having a vision and embracing and welcoming change and being tenacious and having a positive attitude along the way are important skills as you rise in your leadership ladder.
So not to discount positivity, because I love that, Dr. Green, but I may have something that is sort of an unpopular response to this. I think you have to learn to challenge authority. And what I mean by that is the art of persuasion, not the art of insubordination, because there's a delicate dance to know when to propose new ideas. There are whole books about it. Originals by Adam Grant is a great one about being a change agent. I think you also have to be really strategic about the fine details. For example, there's something called invisible work. It's a term that was coined by sociologists in the 80s. And it describes economically undervalued work. It's often, you can think of it like office housework, right? It can be something obvious, like who's always planning the office parties. But it could be something more subtle, like who's responsible for the efforts of allyship, DEIA work, emotional support in the office. And it often falls to women, and it often falls to people in minoritized communities, which also leads to greater instances of burnout, as Ashley talked about. The same is true for gendered approaches to applying for jobs. There are studies that show that women feel they have to match 100% of the job description before they'll apply. So they apply to less jobs, but their success rate is higher. And the same study demonstrated that men only feel that they have to match 60% of the job before they're comfortable applying. So these little nuances are all things that when you get to a leadership position, you have to be a little bit more cognizant of these fine details, not only for your own decision-making power, but for your ability to mentor and coach other people.
Wow. Where were you when I needed that, when I was climbing that career ladder? That's wonderful. I'm taking notes. Well, sometimes we hear this phrase, working smart instead of working hard, right? Doesn't mean that you don't work hard, but there are ways. And so that links to the word strategy, right? How do you strategize that? And I wanted to see if you can give us just one last brief insight about what is a best strategy, let's say, for professional development and leadership development that you have given to mentees that you work with, who are classified professionals, of course.
I'll jump in. I think one of our major jobs as as a manager is to develop our people. And so advice that I've given along the way includes getting involved in what matters where you can. So getting involved. Also, people like to talk about themselves. So do informational interviews. When you have you're developing your vision of where you want to go within the institution, inside the institution or outside the institution, talk to people who are doing those jobs. And you'll find that they'll give their time generously. Find a mentor. Mentors can be key in helping you to stay along your path and encouraging you to advance. And one of the advice that one of my dear bosses gave me a long time ago, and I remembered, was always pay attention, because you never know when what's being talked about will be your new job or responsibility. And so really all those fine details, make sure that you know your organization well. And my advice to our classified professionals is use that annual evaluation process to advance your skills. Insist that there be measurable performance goals related to professional development and your growth. So getting involved, doing informational interviews, finding a mentor, always paying attention, and use that annual evaluation process to help you advance.
Yeah, similarly to what Dr. Green is talking about, I was told once, assume you're interviewing every day. If you're looking to advance, assume that you are being interviewed every day and behave accordingly. My mom is Chinese Indonesian, and she used to tell me, you're not Bijan, you're Asian, so you better get A's. So I think that's something that has carried through, my challenge at work every day. But I think it's important to find a mentor. It doesn't have to be your boss. It doesn't even have to be someone at your agency. You can find mentors by getting involved in your campuses. As Dr. Green said, get involved in your affinity groups, your ERGs, your committees, and meet people. It's like dating. The perfect partner isn't going to find you at home on your couch, and your perfect job isn't going to find you there either. So you have to get out there and you have to network. Use the resources that are available to us in our system. I'm on the board for 4CSD, and so professional development is what we do. Join our community on the Vision Resource Center. Use the trainings on the Vision Resource Center. Subscribe to the Chancellor Office newsletters, attend the IEPI webinars, APAHE, Colejas, A2MED, HAKU, ACRO, 4CS, CCLC, LIFT, ASCCC. They're all here to support the specific work that you're doing, and they can provide training opportunities that are specific to the path that you want to take.
That was so good. Okay, I was taking notes from Christine myself. Okay, so a few thoughts. There's a lot of communication around mentorship. I've always come to think that there's 3 really key types of mentors for your career. So maybe this is helpful for people who are thinking about it. I think one kind is a sponsor. To me, that's somebody in the workplace who actively puts you forward and supports you. So I think finding somebody in your job and making a point to really network within your company on your lunch breaks, whether you're virtual or in person, whether it's a Zoom lunch, but making that point. There's a couple other types of mentors. There's the paid ones, and then there's the free ones. So the paid ones, I'm a big proponent for therapy. I've had therapists that I view as mentors for me, and I'm happy to pay them for their time and hold the space for me. Or else there's professional mentors, coaches like me. I've got programs or working one-on-one. And then there's free mentors. They're people who really care about legacy. I kind of picture the wise owl who's been there and done that and happy to support. So I think those are 3 different types that I really look at in my own career. In addition, I love that Christine talked about this idea of you're being interviewed every day. And I want to give you the flip side of that too, because, I almost want to write a blog post about how I want to take a stand for the typo, because there's so much pressure that we put on ourselves to not even be a human. And if you take it too much to heart that you're being interviewed and evaluated every day, that is the key to so much anxiety. So it's like finding the line between what Christine was saying, because I think it's super valuable. It's very real. And also taking a look at how can you give yourself permission to be human, and take a stand for the typo. I know that recruiters make a decision about whether they want to hire you, and usually 90 seconds is what the research is showing. So you don't want to have a typo on your resume. You want to send it around and things like that. But giving yourself permission to be a human. And I think the best leaders out there create emotional safety. They allow it to feel emotionally safe for their team to make a misstep. I have people on my team making missteps all the time. And, I guess when I worked in counterterrorism, we were actually saving lives. So people's lives were on the line. But now in e-learning, it's like, is there a tech glitch and the person forgot to email my email list? It's okay. We'll email it now. Did we send out the wrong link? Send an oops email. We don't have to be in this anxiety. And I think that starts with your relationship with yourself, self-leadership, giving yourself permission to be safe, because you can do that for others when you do that for yourself. And I think the ultimate piece is mindset work, really looking at where are your limits. Every chapter of my book, U-Turn, at the end, I give a bunch of exercises for people to do mindset work. I think the best leaders know what their shadow is, meaning the parts of themselves that they don't want to take ownership of. They know where they need to take ownership, and they're not afraid to let people know that that's something that they're working on, to encourage people to call them out, and to have that self-awareness. And by the way, self-awareness creates emotional safety, because people know they're working with someone who's taking ownership, not projecting or blaming on them. So just a few thoughts there.
Well, I love that human-centered approach that you just talked about. That's wonderful, and it's what we need right now. And talking about human-centered, I really appreciate your willingness to just do a live demo here for us today. And this is a non-rehearsed session, so it's not like we had a script. So I want to really thank our brave soul, Louis Martirez McFarland. You got your camera on, right?
I do. Thank you.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. You are very brave. Let me tell you a little bit about Louis. Louis is the project manager, long list, EOPS, CARE, CalWorks, Next Up. What was the other one? SLAM?
It's Salam Learning
SLAM,
Community.
sorry.
Mhm.
And you're at the College of Alameda. And I was
Yes.
looking for a volunteer, and here you are to work with Ashley. We're doing
Thank
a
you.
demo about 10 minutes. And so this is really demystifying the process of going to somebody and seeking a counsel. So take it away. I'm going to just leave the two of you alone and turn off my camera.
Thank
Okay.
you. So nice
Thank
to meet
you.
you here, Louis.
Same, Ashley. Thank you for this time. I'm glad that Dr. Shalaiman Duke introduced me to you and Dr. Ding Jo Curry. I'm coming to you because I currently been in my career for about 2 years, and a lot of my peers says, why don't you go for a dean's position? You're oftentimes on a lot of committees and on campus, governance committees, as well as district committees. And you've also taken on some leadership roles and worked on guided pathways or the educational plan, and you support first generation students. And I think you would be a great candidate for a dean, but where do I go and how do I start? And do I need to get a sponsor to help me promote me when I interview these? Because a dean's job is hard and I don't know where to start and how to present myself.
Well, I would say the first thing, and it's interesting, this is content from Tony Robbins. He talks about there's 3 different types of people: dabblers, stressors, masters. And you kind of know who you are when you hit a plateau. You're striking me as a master just by being here. But the dabbler, it's like when they hit a plateau, they were dabbling anyway. So they're not going to go figure it out, right? Like they were dabbling. The stressor, they're going to stress their way through it. They're going to make it, but it's a miserable time. And that's a pattern that becomes your life, right? Like, and then the masters are kind of like, who's been here before? How can I navigate this? So I would say, whenever you're kind of hitting a plateau like that, where you want to up level, asking yourself, like, the power of conversations. Who do you need to be having a conversation with that has been there? So I would actually even get on LinkedIn and I would use the advanced search to type in like deans and put in some keywords that you think would kind of let the search engine, because LinkedIn is not just a tool for networking. I think it's a really good tool to discover what's out there and to connect with people you would have never thought about that could be really uniquely helpful.
Okay.
So can you think of a few keywords like the word dean, maybe one other word, or even look at where you went to school, and can you use that as an association of, has anyone that went to the same school as me become a dean, and use LinkedIn's advanced search to find those people? Because when you have like overlap with someone, they're more likely to respond to you and say, oh, you're an alumni, I'm happy to help you. I would say make it a numbers game. Like, can you reach out to however many people who have been a dean at some point in their career and start having conversations with them? And obviously, if anyone you have an association with, they're more likely to respond. A few questions you might want to think about asking them. One powerful question, obviously, is like, what did you like about it? What did you not like about it? But a non-pushy question that still gets people to want to help is like, do you have any advice for how I could stand out as a candidate for this? Because it's an indirect way. On one side, they might just say, yeah, you want to probably start pursuing this. Maybe you want to upskill, take some trainings, whatever it is, maybe not. But it's also a way of you inviting them to offer to help you, because they might just say, oh, let me reach out to my university and see if they're looking for someone to be a dean, or let me reach out to my organization. So you're inviting them to help you. And then another question that I think helps just as much is the question of, do you know anyone else that might be great for me to talk to, that might have some good wisdom on this? Because that invites them to say, oh, I have a couple other dean friends that might want to help you with this too. And I've been mind blown by the amount of people that have been like, oh, let me connect you to my 7 friends. And your conversations become a flow chart where you're continually being connected to new people. So that's just a starting point, but I know I just gave you a lot. So I want to slow it down and see if you have any other thoughts that I could be helpful with.
I think just reflecting back on what you're saying, like networking, looking in your backyard for associations, asking some questions. I notice when I look at dean's positions on the HR boards, they're looking for specific skills and sets of like, do you have budget experience? Have
Right.
you been a director? How do you go about trying to gain those experience? But also, how do you go about where many times, like myself, I came into community college from the outside, from the private sector and from
Yeah.
the public sector. So how do we bring in these other past lives that we've had? I used to be a probation manager. I used to do IT implementations. And how do I carry these words to HR when I write my cover letters? Because that's oftentimes a struggle to try to connect with HR and trying to let them know who we are as a person on paper. So when they do initial screening.
Yeah, this is such a good question. I think the first thing is, I know people say networking, and I feel like it's such a sweeping term and people get kind of lost in it. And so the advanced search on LinkedIn is really key because it's pointed networking. I feel like there's too much spray and pray, versus like, I'm talking to this person who's uniquely plugged into this universe. So I think one thing to remember as you're doing that is you're still working with humans, and they want to like the people that they work with. So even if you don't have the budget experience, at the end of the day, people are taking referrals very heavily. So if you're getting referred and you create a reality where that's continually happening by asking those key questions of, do you have any advice or how I can stand out? Is there anyone else you think I should be talking to? You're creating a referral train for yourself after you started pointed networking. I do think that when you're looking at your cover letter, you don't want it to regurgitate your resume. I think a lot of people make that mistake. The research, I always wonder as a career expert, like, is the cover letter dead? Because so many people are networking and sending quick messages, and it's like you skip the cover letter, your resume gets passed along. What I'm finding in the research is that it often doesn't get read, but it's positively acknowledged that it exists, and it hurts you if you don't have one. So it's good to have one. And if somebody's on the fence about you, they read it very carefully. So it's like one of the least powerful and most powerful documents in your job search in a bizarre way. I would say a couple things is Remembering with your resume that it's a marketing document. It is not a place for you to regurgitate everything you've ever done. It's a place for you to carefully take a look at where are you going, and in the repertoire of your experiences, what are the most relevant things you've done that are related to where you're going. So even if 70% of your probation job was you doing XYZ, and this dean job really wants to hear about you doing ABC, you're going to want to ask yourself, where in my probation job was I tuning into the ABC? Because you want to be tuning into where you're headed. I would look at job postings of, dean's jobs that you would really want. And I would really go within and say, okay, maybe I don't have every exact thing, but where have I been using the skill behind that responsibility? Another thing, as you're writing your resume, is to consider the verb that you use under every single job. A lot of people speaking of leadership, they're not really tuning into their leadership when they're writing their bullets. So they're using a lot of words like helped, assisted. They're just not putting a lot of empowerment on those verbs. But there's a level of leadership in everything you do. So if you help somebody, maybe you co-manage something. I think that's a better verb. Or instead of assist, you collaborated. I think that it's just really important to kind of tune into your leadership, no matter what the task was that you were doing. I also have looked at a lot of heat mapping data with recruiters, and they really do look at the first bullet under every single job entry on your resume. And so you really want that to be your most quantifiable, best bullet. So when you're thinking about every single thing you've ever done, you really want to tune in the most on that first bullet of what do they want to hear in the dean's job, and how can I make that first bullet the most pertinent for that one, and quantify where you can. I also think a final thing with your resume, and I'll let you talk because I don't want to is when you've written it out and you've done all this, and this is something I work with a lot of students on in my programs, is walking through your resume. One of the most basic questions that you can get in your interviews or in these conversations is walk me through your resume. And this could be in a networking conversation. It doesn't even have to be in an interview. And a lot of people haven't sat down with their resume and out loud walked through their resume. So once you've done this, I would print it out and put some bullets in the margins that are stories that demonstrate the skills. So you could say, well, the first job that I have here is this. Here's something I'm really proud of that's incredibly relevant for the dean's position. And here's the story of how I use that skill. And that's a skill I'm excited to bring to the table here. Now let me go through my next one. So really having that intentionality beneath it. One thing we haven't talked about because we've been in the tactical is mindset work. Like really, I'm hearing this on you and everybody has it, is like, I don't have enough experience. There are so many people getting hired that don't have the budget experience or this experience because the human on the other side of the Zoom liked the other human, and that's it. And I think being honest, saying, that's not something I have a lot of experience with, but I really want to learn that. And I'm down to invest in learning that, whatever that looks like for you, for all of you. So yeah, I'll stop talking and just give you some space if you have any questions on that.
No, it's been great. It's a great feedback. So thank you. It allows me a lot to think about and how I'm going to approach looking at opportunities. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Well, Louis, I've just in a short 10 minutes, do you feel like you had buckets and buckets of advice that you can use?
I do. I think just from the perspective of a classified, one thing that I learned is like try to get a sponsor. Try to look at what you do in your work and see where there are sameness so that you can promote yourself. Look at your resume in a different way. Ashley told me the first bullet is very important, the verb. I never thought about that, like the time on the resume. And then also ask some reflective questions from people who are in those positions and where you want to be. So you can think about the different career paths that they went and how they got there. No, it helped a lot. So thank you very much, Ashley.
My pleasure.
Thank you for being such a good sport and joining us today.
Thank you.
We're coming to the final few minutes, so I want to turn to the panel. You've given us a lot already today, But before we end, would you please provide one more that's actionable takeaway that the participant could immediately, as soon as they got off the Zoom today, that they could apply to guide their leadership and professional development? One last advice before we end.
I guess to close off my portion, I would say really see networking as a way of life. It doesn't have to happen at events. I mean, there's plenty of events you can find on Eventbrite, meetup.com, everywhere galore, LinkedIn groups. You can find so many events. But I think that it's something that can happen at the grocery store, in the peanut butter aisle, in line, at the coffee shop. And it doesn't mean that you need to be on all the time and pushing all the time. I think just being available for connection. Whenever you want to move your life forward, conversations can do that. New people, new thoughts, new ideas, and just being receptive. So really seeing networking as something you could do all the time.
Thank you.
Along the lines of making yourself available and open, I think that we have to be mindful of making space for one another. Of course, as a director of diversity, I have to, that's going to be my suggestion. But I really think that encouraging people to show up as their authentic selves is magnetic. It's what I want to do every day. I want everyone to be able to come to work and show up as their authentic self. I had blue hair a couple of weeks ago. And my intention with that was that maybe someone saw a director with blue hair and thought that they could, be a director too, if that was their thing. So when you show up as your authentic self, you free up your brain power to address other things that you need to focus on, other than how you're fitting in. And you really demonstrate to other people that they can too.
This has been an honor to be able to participate in this webinar, and just want to express my gratitude to our classified professionals. They're key at transforming the lives of our students, generations of families, and the community. I just want to say thank you. And I'm humbled and awed by the strategies shared today. I can't wait to review the recording. I encourage those on the call. I'm all about action. Establish your vision, prioritize the top maybe 3 strategies that resonated with you from this webinar, and set some goals, some SMART goals. Make them specific and measurable and achievable, realistic and timely. And keep shining, keep doing what you're doing. You do amazing work, and I thank you.
Thank you, Monica. I want to just circle back just a little bit, since we do have a few minutes, of what Louis mentioned, this word sponsor, because it may not resonate with people. What is a sponsor and what's a mentor, right? I can just share with you that sponsor for me has been people who have mentioned my name when the president or the dean or a director is looking for, somebody who could do this and that. And they said, yeah, Louis, he did this and that, and he was on a committee and he was so helpful and he contributed in this way. So sponsor is someone who knows about your work, your value, your assets, your strength, and who is mindful of your presence and be able and willing and advocate on your behalf and mentions your name when people are looking for talents in your institutions. So that's a little bit different from a mentor. I don't know, Monica, have you had sponsors in your career? People have mentioned your name to someone else?
Absolutely. I think that's key in getting to where I am today, is making those impressions and getting involved and having people mention my name along the way.
That's right. And then going back to Ashley's point about personal branding. So when your name is mentioned, what are the words that come to mind, right? When people mention your name, your sponsor mention your name, what are maybe the top 3 common words that they will think of you to describe who you are to somebody else? And I think that's very important for the sponsor to know. And how do you represent yourself? So I thank you for mentioning that, Ashley. And Christine, I think that your advice of just being authentically you, purposely dyeing your hair blue so that you make a statement is really very thoughtful and intentional in your strategy of, being inclusive and making a statement. So I thank you for that. Well, I want to ask you to please help me thank our wonderful panelists today. And a big shout out again to Louis Martirez McFarland and his courage to open himself up in front of everyone. It's not an easy thing to do. So I'm so glad you had leaned into your courage side and the conquering the fear of just trying to exposing yourself about, what it is you want to do and your doubts. So I appreciate that. And I want to thank the Chancellor's Office and our LIFT team in making this webinar possible. There are many unsung heroes behind the scenes, as always. And in the chat is a link for evaluation and feedback. This is very important to us. And there are not too many webinars that's designed for classified professionals. So we truly want to serve your needs well. And please just take a few minutes to finish the survey because your feedback is extremely important for us to know that if you were inspired or you gained some ideas in your leadership and professional development, hopefully you've gotten plenty of suggestions that you could take action on. And we hope that you will continue to join our webinar this coming fall. If you have any suggestions for topic, we're always welcome for you to put that on your survey. Thank you again to our panelists and thank you for attending today. See you and have a wonderful summer ahead. We'll see you back in the fall. Bye-bye, everyone.